Hi, my name's Nina Lemon. I am a 41-year-old woman with cropped curly red hair. I'm filming this presentation sat in my daughter's playroom, and rather than the customary academic books, behind me on the shelves are their very many colourful toys, books and instruments, which provide lots of different opportunities for sensory play. I'm Artistic Director of a youth arts charity called Peer Productions. I'm also a playwright and an academic researcher with Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, and my particular interest lies in theatre for sex education. Peer Productions charity specialises in using theatre and peer education to teach young people about a range of different topics, including mental health, relationships and sex. Today I'm going to be speaking to you about our Generation Girls programme, and specifically about the challenges involved in delivering meaningful and empowering education about relationships and sex to a very specific group of autistic girls. I want to start by warning you that this presentation will include references to sexual exploitation and abuse. And whilst I won't be explicit, it's important to acknowledge that talking about these topics, although important, can be triggering for many people, bringing up uncomfortable feelings and memories. Please be kind to yourself if you need to step away. Equally, know that you are, I believe, in safe hands. This is a challenging topic for me too, which is one of the many reasons I decided to set up a programme specifically addressing these issues. In the interest of full disclosure, I am not autistic. I don't know what it's like to be autistic, but as far as neurotypicals go, I do have a very specific set of lived experiences, which mean I have a nuanced understanding of autism, and particularly of autism in women and girls. Here are my credentials. I am a participatory artist with over 20 years' experience working with different community groups. I first started working with young people and adults with learning disabilities back when I was 15 in the 90s, and I've continued to deliver sessions with students who attend schools for those with moderate learning disabilities, and a great many of those students also have an autism diagnosis. Professionally, I am grateful to have had the opportunity to work with and alongside a number of simply brilliant autistic female academics and artists, and I am grateful for their generosity in sharing their experiences with me. On a more personal note, I am mum to two non-verbal autistic daughters, aged 6 and 12. Both my children are considered to have severe learning disabilities and require one-to-one care at all times. I'm telling you all this because I know that autism is far from being one thing. It is a spectrum that is so vast that it is, in my experience, fruitless to suggest that there is really any universal truths. Any project, intervention or approach which serves one group will of course be deeply inappropriate and ineffectual for another. I'd like you to bear this in mind as I talk to you about this very specific group of girls that the Generation Girls programme serves. Generation Girls started life as a 10-week programme of empowering drama sessions for autistic girls and girls with learning disabilities. Female identifying practitioners, supported by peer educators, work with cohorts of girls who attend secondary schools for students with moderate learning disabilities. And many of those girls also have a diagnosis of autism, and some others are potentially autistic but not diagnosed. This project, which was funded by, amongst others, Children in Need, focused on this very specific group of students, and here's why. Sadly, this group is uniquely vulnerable to sexual exploitation and peer-on-peer abuse. This is because, as women, they are more likely to experience sexual exploitation and domestic abuse than their male counterparts. Many attend schools where, because autism and other learning disabilities are more highly diagnosed in males, they are in the minority and can lack a strong female network of friends. Many attend schools further away from home, so they may lack a local support network too. MLD schools are usually quite small and rarely offer sixth form provision. This means that these young women often attend larger mainstream sixth form colleges and are often ill-equipped to cope in this new environment. Young people with disabilities are often infantilised and desexualised, and this means that some adults feel uncomfortable talking to them about sex and relationships, and this means they are often more naive than their non-disabled counterparts and less likely to receive education, particularly about being LGBTQ. Some people with autism and learning disabilities can struggle with the nuanced thinking required to navigate sexual behaviours, and can be prone to see things in a way where gender roles, intentions and obligations are black and white. The behavioural strategies used for well-meant reasons with children with additional needs can inadvertently reinforce the importance of good behaviour, which means compliant behaviour. As a result, the girls are often unable to protect themselves from abuse, as they have been conditioned to do as they are told. One woman told us, "I would not shout out, as shouting is against the rules." For the second part of the presentation, I'm going to address what for me is the biggest challenge of this work, and that centres around the tricky process of managing safeguarding, care and kindness, and risk. Over the 6 years of developing this work, this triangle of safety, care and risk colours everything about the project. In all honesty, it's not unusual for young women taking part to find the sessions uncomfortable, especially at first. Some cringe, blush, need to step away or even cry. They are working with new people in new ways, and topics such as relationships, bodies, consent and exploitation can be challenging to talk about, especially when, for all the many reasons I've already outlined, you have been taught and socialised that it's bad and shameful to speak up about these things. Here's a case study of a young woman we're going to call Lily. Lily struggles with anxiety. She worries a lot and usually finds it difficult to talk about personal things. She can get upset quite easily and worries about what others think of her. With consistent reassurance and support from both facilitators and the other girls in the group, Lily was slowly able to come out of her shell. A genuine trust was established in the group, and Lily found that she felt safe enough to ask questions, even about topics, including menstrual hygiene and sexual relationships, which she felt too embarrassed to ask anyone about before. Her confidence grew and her previously very low self-esteem started to improve. By the end of the programme, Lily was able to attend our celebration day and was able to take part in workshops alongside girls she had not previously met. She even felt confident enough to raise her hand and answer a question in front of a large group before proudly coming up to collect her certificate in yellow rose to mark her achievement. She even asked her teaching assistant to photograph her, which is something she previously felt very anxious about. Lily is not an isolated example, with evaluations showing that every single girl who completed the programme felt more confident speaking up in front of others after taking part. So how does it work? It is an established safe space. Part of that is that this is a girls-only space. Don't worry, I know there are not only two genders, and we are inclusive to people who are trans or non-binary, but crucially, the vast majority of participants have been socialised as girls and have thus been negatively impacted by the patriarchy. Their self-worth, their expectations of themselves and their relationships have been at least doubly impacted by their gender and their disability. We know there aren't only two genders. Sadly, no one told the patriarchy. So when we come in and we work in girls' space, many participants voice feeling more able to open up than they would have done in a mixed space. It's important too that the project spans a 10-week period. This allows time for processing and also allows time for trust to be built up. Unless the topic is raised by a participant, we don't come in on week 1 and start talking about rape. We build up to it. We work hard to establish ground rules early on and work with participants to come up with those rules. This means we can forewarn them that some topics might feel uncomfortable, and we can start to talk about plans and strategies for how we might manage that when the time comes. This is also where we highlight the importance of both confidentiality and safeguarding. What we talk about will only be talked about in this group unless you tell us something that makes us worried about your safety. If that happens, we will tell your school's safeguarding lead so that we can make sure that you are safe. But being safe is not enough. A safe space is the bare minimum. We also need to establish a caring space, and what a caring space looks like is different for every group and actually every participant. But here are the key principles. Everyone is valuable. It is our aim that every participant feels valued, and we do this in a number of different ways. We encourage the girls to talk about what they're good at, what they're passionate about, and what they enjoy. What do they like about themselves? Here are some self-portraits which the girls drew and annotated. We know that some of the conversations we will be having will be upsetting, so we try to build up and reinforce the positives as much as possible in advance of those conversations. Everyone is an individual. We have a very high staff ratio for this, and this allows us to support individual needs and to tailor the programme effectively. And then, in contrast to this, everyone is the same. Now that might sound very counterintuitive. How can we all be individual but the same? What I mean by this is that we have found that very often participants assume that their problems that they are experiencing as young women in the world are because they're autistic or because they have a learning disability. And sometimes they feel so negatively about these aspects of themselves that they have a kind of internalised ableism, if you like. And this, combined with victim-blaming culture in general, means they think it's their fault. So when they hear facilitators and peer educators talking about their own shared struggles as women, whatever they might be, whether that's managing having a heavy period, feeling overwhelmed by social media beauty messages, or navigating sexual boundaries, it's really powerful. Although we would never insist a peer educator shares their experiences, on more than one occasion I have had the privilege of witnessing a peer educator talk about their own decision to postpone sexual activity. And the girls in the group were so pleasantly surprised to see that they are not alone. This is not necessarily an autism thing or a disability thing. It's a woman thing, it's a human thing. We also do what we can to make the environment accessible and friendly. And this often involves having fidget or other sensory toys available. We also try to make all activities sensory friendly. This led to us having a vagina cushion especially made, which you can see here. In this picture, a younger me is holding a beautifully crafted velvet and silk cushion in the shape of a vagina. This tiny subversive act, and actually Gigi is full of tiny subversive acts, may seem silly or extravagant, but it's part of an overall message that reinforces the idea that women's bodies, all parts of women's bodies, are beautiful. So when the space is safe and the space is caring, then we can start to take risks. And those risks involve sometimes making our participants feel anxious and upset. Girls do cry in sessions or need to express that they feel embarrassed or awkward. Of course they do. We don't live in a society where we talk about sex and relationships, and that's not normalised. This might be the first time they're doing it, and it's okay to feel that way. I believe, and the Generation Girls programme reflects this, that just because participants feel uncomfortable, even if they're actually a bit distressed, that doesn't mean we shouldn't provide this education. This kind of education is protective, and as I've already explained, this is vital for this group. It's misguided to suggest that these girls can't handle it, or that a hopefully brief feeling of discomfort outweighs the far larger risk of sexual exploitation. When girls are empowered with language and knowledge, they are able to make far better decisions to protect themselves. I'm going to finish this presentation by telling you a story about a young woman who I'm going to call Hannah. She took part in an extracurricular Generation Girls group in an evening. It's funny, but I'm not telling you so that we can laugh at the autistic girl. I'm telling you this story because it perfectly demonstrates the power of knowledge and language and the value of a safe, caring and risk-taking space. Hannah's mum called me and asked if I could come to her house to provide an extra sex education session for her daughter outside of the project. When I asked her why, she said she was concerned that her 17-year-old daughter was close to becoming sexually active with her boyfriend. This lovely mum wasn't against her daughter becoming sexually active, but she was struggling to find the words to help prepare her daughter for this. I wasn't so sure that Hannah was on the brink of starting sexual activity, so I suggested I talk to her at Generation Girls before deciding if a home visit was needed. I took her aside in a tea break, and this is how the conversation went. Hannah, Mum called me this week, and she wanted me to talk to you about your relationship with Rob. Why did Mum call you? I think your mum feels a bit worried about you. Why does Mum feel worried? I think she thinks that you and Rob might want to have sex. Hannah was aghast. Why does Mum think that? Well, she can see how much you like each other, and she said you're cuddling quite a lot. Are you having sex with Rob? No. Do you think you might like to have sex with Rob in the future? Maybe. How far in the future do you think that might be? Maybe when I'm 20 or 21, so quite a long way in the future then. Yes. So often people in relationships start with closed mouth kissing and cuddling. Then they might move on to open mouth kissing. Then they might take clothes off or touch or kiss each other's bodies before they might have sex. What stage do you think you and Rob are at? Closed mouth kissing. Do you think you're both happy with that? Yes, when I sit on his lap, my vagina goes all tingly. Why does that happen? That's a good thing, as it's your vagina's way of telling you that you like this person and it's prepared if you want to have sex. So my head knows I'm not ready, but my vagina thinks I am. Why does it think that? Stupid vagina. And that pretty much sums up my emerging sexual feelings as a teenager. We went on to talk about sexual pleasure, masturbation, orgasm, and none of that would have been possible if she hadn't been empowered with the knowledge and the language she needed and the safe, caring, risk-taking space to facilitate that discussion. Thank you for listening to me. I really look forward to hearing your questions.